I'm here with Mr. Fred Goetz. My name is Rhonda Asarch. I'm at the Boca Raton Historical Society on December 19th, 2012. And we are going to talk about the history of IBM and its impact on Boca Raton. Mr. Goetz, where are you originally from, and when did you arrive in Boca Raton?
Okay, I was born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. That's the home of the Pottsville Maroons, who are now the Washington Redskins. And it's the home of Yuengling beer, the oldest brewery in the United States.
Okay.
Okay? I came to Boca Raton in 1978 from San Jose, California.
Ah, okay. And what is your educational background?
Okay, I went to Catholic grade school, high school in Pottsville. Then I went into the Army, I guess in 1945. And then I came out and with the help of the GI Bill, I went to the University of Chicago. And I studied aeronautical engineering because I wanted to be a test pilot. But I did a bad thing. I flew under the Randolph Street Bridge, and you're not allowed to do that.
Oh.
So they took my license away. So then I started designing electroplating equipment in Chicago. And then my father had a stroke in Pennsylvania, and he was the Yuengling beer distributor. So I came home and I ran the beer business for 2 years. And I didn't really care for the beer business that much, but I liked the beer. But so Alcoa just came to Pottsville at that time, and I went to work with them designing extrusions, aluminum extrusions for storm windows, storm doors, trailer trucks, and airplanes, and various things. And then they decided to leave town after they were there 18 years because they had free taxes for 20 years. So when that term was coming up, they decided to leave and go to Tennessee. So I had to leave town too. So a friend of mine and I went to Philadelphia and we started our own business in the machine shop. That's when the space was just starting to go to the moon. And we were doing very well. And I thought I was going to be a millionaire. But in 1963, the government didn't pass the budget on July 1st, like they're messing around with it now. And so all the government contracts stopped. So everybody turns around and looks for the guy who owes the money to collect. Well, everybody was collecting from me, but when I turned around, I didn't have anybody to collect from because I was at the bottom, the guy. So I left the state before they caught me. So when I was going into bankruptcy. So I sold encyclopedias in New Jersey from door to door. And that's how I really got to be with IBM. One night I was checking in at the office about 10 o'clock at night, and we finished up. And when I came down to go across the street to go to the diner to have a cup of coffee and a piece of pie, like I did every night, it was pouring rain. And I was standing there at the light with my umbrella. And this guy came up in a fedora hat and a suit and a vest and a tie and everything, and he was getting soaking wet. So I put the umbrella over and I asked him if he'd like a cup of coffee. And he looked at me like I was kind of stunned, you know. And he said, yeah, sure, I'll go. So we went over to the diner, and we had our pie and our coffee and our milk. And I told him my horror story why I was in Jersey. And my wife and kids were over in Philadelphia and everything. So he says, after a half hour, he says, okay, now I listened to your BS, now you have to listen to mine. He said, but not here. He said, we have to go 2 blocks down the street. So I said, well, I got time for the next train. I said, okay. So we went down and we're walking and in the rain, you know, with my umbrella. And we come up to this building and I see IBM on the door. At that time, I didn't even know what the heck IBM was, you know. And so he had the key, we went inside, and he turned the lights on, he sat down at his desk, he picked up the phone, he called some guy in Poughkeepsie, New York. And he said, hey, I have a young engineer here that needs a job. He said, what? He said, here's what I want you to do. And he told him he wanted to set up some interviews in Poughkeepsie. And he asked me when I could be in Poughkeepsie. And I said, I don't even know where it is. So he says, told the guy on the phone, he said, I'll draw him a map, he'll be there Tuesday. He said, so
and
I
who
did.
was that?
Pardon?
Who was that?
That was George Green.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was a 4th level manager in Fishkill, New York. So anyway, I went up there in a blizzard. I mean, it was snowing like you wouldn't believe. But I drove up there and I had 4 interviews from different managers. But I picked the one who worked for George Green because I felt I owed it to him, even though it wasn't the best paying one. But anyway, I owed it to George. But George was a fantastic guy. Every day I worked there for the first month, he came to visit me, asked me how I was doing, did my family get here yet, are they taken care of? I mean, George was fabulous. Then after a couple months, his father-in-law died. And his father-in-law was president of Branson Ultrasonics. So George left IBM to go be the CEO of Branson. So I was left. But anyway, I've been with IBM since. And I went from Fishkill to Manassas, Virginia. And I was addicted to go to Burlington, Vermont, but it was too cold there. So I pulled a few strings and went to San Jose, California instead. Then I was transferred to Tucson, and that was too hot. So I pulled a few strings and got transferred to Boca Raton.
Okay.
And that's how I wound up in Boca.
Okay. So what attracted you to Boca? Was it the opportunity that was opening up here,
Well,
or was it the climate? 'Cause
Well,
you mentioned twice
there
now.
were a lot of people that I worked with in Manassas who had transferred to Boca. And plus the fact they were starting in the low end of the business. And they said they needed a wild duck. And I was kind of known as a wild duck in IBM. So,
A wild duck because?
well, you kind of got the work done. Sometimes maybe you didn't follow the rules exactly, but you were somebody they could depend on to meet the dates. And that was my thing. I had to meet the date.
Oh, okay. Rogue, but you met the dates.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So how long were you in San Jose?
I was in almost every place, believe it or not, 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were with IBM for 15, 20 years before
Yeah,
coming to Boca?
About 15, yeah.
Okay. And so when you came to Boca Raton, what was your position and what was your title, your
Well,
responsibilities?
I was a staff engineer. That's the job they gave me when I came to Boca Raton. I was assistant to the president out in San Jose. Well, not the president, but the site manager. Mm-hmm. And when I came to Boca, I took the job as a staff engineer, working on the data master.
Okay.
And it was working on the data master that when they took the data master to get the money to do the data master up in Armonk, Frank Carey was the CEO at that time. And he said, it was Bill Sidneys who was my boss then. He was the one making the presentation. And Frank Carey said, well, that's a nice machine, but it's not going to stop Apple from eroding the beaches. Because it was like a dumb terminal, you know, that talked to a mainframe. So he said, I'd like you to hand that over to some other people, but you come back to me in 2 weeks and tell me how we're going to stop Apple from eroding the beaches. So then Bill came back to Boca, and he turned the data master over to some other people in Boca. And then since I worked, there was 3 of us then, and he sat down, and we went through the whole complex of the computer, of what it would take, to make a small computer. And we set it up in different sections, and then he went to get the key people that were the brains for each one of those sections. And then we put 12 people together, because that's how we split which became the Dirty Dozen. That's correct. Yeah. And we didn't go home. We kind of slept in the conference room. It was a little bit bigger than this. And since there were no computers at that time, we put chart paper. Remember the old chart paper? We put that on all the walls and for all the different concept spots of the computer and everything. And if you had an idea for any one of them, you wrote it on the chart paper. And that's what we did for about the first week, okay? We just brainstormed it.
Right.
Then the second week, we took each chart and we broke it down to the good, the bad, the possible, the not possible. And we did that for each chart. And then while some guys were putting the technical things together on the chart, after we nailed it down to the goods, then a couple of us, myself and another guy, we were concentrating on getting a model built to go up to Armonk to make the pitch, to make the presentation with.
And who would that be?
Pardon?
Who would that be?
Well, it was myself, Bob Seiler, and I can't remember the other guy's name now. My memory's not as good as it used to be. I'll think of it though. But anyway, then we got together, and Sidney's practiced his pitch and everything. And since we didn't have any real guts inside the model, we put a data master under the table, with wires coming up. But it made the lights blink and everything, and the monitor work. Mm-hmm. So when Bill made the presentation up in Armonk, they had a little thing there that demoed all the lights and everything. And when they was done with the demo, the board voted it down. They said no. So the president of IBM at that time was John Opel, but John Akers was vice president. And John Akers got up and said that the B in IBM is for business, not toys. So the board voted it down. So Frank Carey thought for a couple of minutes, and then he said, okay, he said, here's the deal. He said, I just turned 59 yesterday. He said, I have to get out when I'm 60. He said, so you have 11 months. He said, my signature's good, I think he said for $80 million. He said, so you have $80 million in 11 months. He said, I think we need something like this to stop Apple from eroding the beaches. He said, I can't give you people. He said, you'll have to do the best you can. He said, but if anybody gives you a hard time, call me. So, boy, Bill packed the thing up, and we come home, and we went to work. So then we couldn't get people because Boca hated us. They kicked us out.
What do you mean, Boca? The city of Boca Raton?
No, the IBM Boca, because they were small mainframes, and they thought we were going to kill their end of the business. Okay. So they kicked us out of the building.
The 2100?
Pardon?
Building? The 2100 building?
The one on the Yamato Road.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they kicked it. Well, we were really in trailers on Banyan Road up there off a military trail.
Right.
In back of the post office.
Right.
So anyway, we got booted out, and they gave us a place on 18th Street and Jog Road.
Okay.
Okay, but because there were only like 20 of us at that time, okay. And then we needed people, so Boulder was getting out of the copier business then. So we went out to Boulder to recruit people. Man, they had 400 people in the auditorium, and we were only looking for like 20 more people, you know. So they lined up, and Bill was interviewing, a couple of guys were interviewing, I was keeping the records, you know, and everything. And because we thought, well, even if we're not going to take 400, at least we'll have a good bunch of records, you know, that we can pick from. So we picked up about 26 people, I think, on that trip. And they came to Boca almost immediately. And, but then we got too big for the space we had on 18th Street. And at that time then, there was a company building buildings on Linton and Congress, in back of the Huffman garage there. So we leased their first building, and we moved into that. Okay, it was a two-story building, and we leased that. We moved in, and it was very, very nice. We had a lot of space then and stuff. We had labs, so it was good, and that's where we started.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was you had mentioned that the other IBMers weren't fond. What was the work environment? Did you feel tension? Was it competitive? Was it congenial?
Like to do our testing, like for drop testing, for any kind of testing, okay, EMC, you know, to see if the system interfered with the television or something. They wouldn't allow us to use their labs in Boca even. I mean, in Boca I had some of the best labs. So we had to fly with the equipment around the country to go to places like Boulder and Lexington and stuff like that to do our testing, okay?
Wow.
And I mean, it got to be funny after a while because we were keeping this such a big secret. I mean, when we were in these buildings, like on 18th Street and all, we weren't allowed to dress like IBMers, okay? We had to go to work like I'm dressed today, right? You know, so people wouldn't, so people wouldn't think we were IBM, because they said, if you guys failed, we don't want anybody to know that you were IBM.
Okay.
So, but it was funny when we flew in the airplanes with this stuff. We had to, you know, put it in boxes and everything, and we couldn't check it, okay, because it was confidential, IBM. So we had to buy first class seats up against the bulkhead. That's the only place you can put packages in their seats. There's special belts to hold the box. So we put them in the boxes. And what I did, I painted faces on the boxes when they were in these seats. And it was kind of funny. The people would come in because we got to go in first to mount the boxes in the seat. The people would come in and they'd see him in first class. They'd say, "I'll take his drinks," you know. So it was kind of amusing, you know, interesting.
So was the environment here in Boca then, was it different than the other places you had been at, or was it? Were the divisions competitive like that as well?
The other places accepted us because we weren't a threat to them, where Boca thought we were a threat. And eventually, we really did. We took over the site. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they were right.
Okay. So what would you say was the first challenge you met in this new project that IBM was doing?
Well, the first thing was size. Okay, I mean, computers were monstrous. Okay, and now we were thinking of something that would fit on a desk. Okay, so we had to sit down and really concentrate on what would be a size that we could get away with to put on somebody's desk. Okay, mm-hmm. Okay. So that was the thing. I mean, keyboards at that time, they had 100 and some keys and all kinds of things, you know. And I mean, it was just monster stuff. So what we were thinking then, we thought of a 16-inch square. We took like 1/4 of a desk. Okay, we figured somebody would be willing to give that much up. So we thought, okay, we'll do that, plus the keyboard, because the keyboard you could move around, okay? But we didn't think they could move around the system. So then we had to find a keyboard quick that had all the IBM standards of the 80 grams touch and everything for the touch. And Toronto, IBM in Toronto was just starting to do a bank job for a bank, and they were fighting the same thing, the size at the teller window. So they were designing this keyboard. So when I found that out, I went up there and I stole one from them, and that's how I got the first keyboard.
Okay, so let's look at some of these machines then.
Okay.
And so then the 5150 was the first
Right. This is the
product
first.
that you came up with.
Yes.
Then after the tower, the fake tower that you did in New York.
Well,
in the
no.
presentation.
No. We had a box like this for the presentation. We had the Data Master, which was a dumb terminal.
Right.
It wasn't a tower.
Okay.
It was a big. It had a 9-inch monitor. It had 2 8-inch floppies, but we just did that to do some stuff on the monitor and and to make the lights work.
Okay.
Okay, and you could punch a few things on the keyboard, and so we had a hole in the round table that the wires came up through, and into this box.
Okay.
So.
But the 5150 was your first product then?
Yeah.
And so you stole this keyboard design
Yeah.
from
This is
Toronto.
almost the exact keyboard that they use. It's really heavy, as you know.
It is heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the exact keyboard that Toronto was doing. And the monitor we got from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
They had that monitor. It was a green on black screen, which it still is there.
And what's one of your fondest memories of this machine?
That's fun. Well, there's a million of them, but just getting all the stuff inside was a real challenge. I mean, at first everything was so big. The first models were like twice the size of this because, well, first they had to find a operating system. So they went to some big companies and they said, oh, it'll take 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But we only had, like I said, 11 months, right?
Right.
So then somebody said, well, they knew a kid out in Washington who was doing games, but they said they heard something about an operating system. So a few guys went out and talked to Bill Goetz. And I mean, he was only, 22 at the time, I think. He was over a garage is where his place was. Mm-hmm. And he had a friend who was working on an operating system. But he didn't tell IBM that it was the friend's operating system. He left to believe it was his, right? So anyway, he bought the operating system from his friend for, I think, $50,000, something like that. And then he worked on it to work with our machine. So I had 2 guys going back and forth to Seattle, okay? While one was going out, the other one was coming back. And almost every day when we were making changes in the lab on this huge box that was all yellow wire, you know, and everything, then as soon as we'd make the change, it'd go out to Bill Goetz so he could make the changes in the software. So that's the way he kept up with us. Mm-hmm. So, and then finally, then with Intel and all, everything started shrinking. And we got several board companies on to make us boards. And it was the key thing was getting the chips and everything, and getting the drives down to this size, because before the drives were huge.
And so this was the first machine that IBM produced that had components that were non-IBM. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And see, that's one of the thing where one of the decisions that we made early, that, I mean, almost everything in IBM you have to go through all kinds of testing and pass this and get this approval, that approval. I mean, that's why everything took 3 to 4 to 5 years. And again, we only had 11 months, so we said, we're not going to do that. And we did not do that. but
So
that's how we did.
So the rogue engineer found other rogues
Other
to go
roads,
with
right,
him.
right. So anyway, right, and then that's the way it started, and it kept growing from there.
Okay. And so from here, the 5150, what do we have the next machine?
Well, right. This was the 51. The next one was the XT. Okay, the PC XT.
And I don't think we have that in
No,
here.
no, we don't have the XT in here.
No.
And then we went from the XT. Well, the XT was the first one to have a hard drive. This when it first came out, only had a single floppy.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Then
I remember this machine.
Right. Then we grew to 2 floppies. Then the XT, we had a single floppy and a hard drive.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so then we went to the AT, where you could have 2 hard drives. Okay. And that became like the business machine. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that grew. Then all hell broke loose. But I think when we did the PC, the XT, and the AT, we grew to 300 and some people. Okay, with manufacturing, marketing, and everybody. 368, something like that. Okay. Then on one day they decided to grow the PC company. And they dumped about 2,000 people on us. Okay, so people whose items were going out of business and they needed a job, so they gave them to us. Okay, and then we had 7 vice presidents.
Wow.
Okay, where before we didn't have any.
Yeah.
Okay, except for Estridge. Okay, and then so now, to do anything, you had to go and genuflect in front of 7 vice presidents, get approval, and this, that. And then that's when all this, we have to change to something, this microchannel thing, okay? I mean, which was 140 pins, okay? And it went across the board. It was very difficult with the tolerances and everything. And so then the PS2 was born. Then with the microchannel. Well, again, everything bogged down because we became IBM. Mm-hmm. Okay, with the 7 vice presidents, and God, I mean, I'd go up to, well, plus we grew in buildings, okay, or on Linton Boulevard there, in that complex, I think we grew to 4 or 5 buildings by then.
Right.
And then you'd come down to Yamato, and I was there sometimes till 8, 9 o'clock at night, sitting there waiting to talk to a vice president to get permission to go do the thing I wanted to do. So anyway.
You had the red tape.
Oh
start
yeah. So
you got more popular. And
right. So when we had the AT, I think IBM had like 85% of the market. Okay, close to 85. Anyway, so. Then, because we were bogged down and we had all these copycats by then, because, number one, they didn't patent anything on the PC, because their illustrious forecasters said we would only ever sell 50,000 machines, okay? In 3 weeks, we had 66,000 orders. And then all hell broke loose too at that time, because the worst thing you can do is announce something that you can't produce. Yeah, so we had to go like the devil and get people on board and get vendors on board all over the world. God, we were running all over the whole world, signing up vendors to help us out, you know, to get.
And this was the first time an IBM product was sold retail.
Right. Well, right into Comp USA or right,
Sears.
Yeah, Sears. Well, I think Comp USA was the first bunch of stores.
Right.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, all hell broke loose. It really did, because we had orders up the yin yang, you know. And so anyway, we worked our way through that, and all the buildings on Clintmore, from on the north side, from Congress to military, they were all IBM. Okay, well, that's where the manufacturing, the industrial design, and but anyway, we just kept
Building and building.
kept leasing, right? So, but so anyway, we bogged down for the PS2. Then when they ran into a software problem with the PS2. So then they needed a system that used the PC bus, but used some of the PS2 hardware.
Okay.
So that became the Mod 30. Okay. At that time, a bunch of us, well, a group of us, split away from the PC, and we were working in a project called Caribbean. Okay. And what that did, that put a computer inside the television.
Okay.
Okay, this was in 1984. They're just starting to do that today in
Right.
2012.
Apple TV. Right.
Right. I mean, I have a Samsung right now that has a computer in it. Okay, I just bought it. But I mean, this is 2012. We did that in 1984,
Yeah.
and they made us put it on the shelf so we could do that Mod 30, because they couldn't pull the people off of the PS2. They needed them to keep doing their work, so they took us off of the Caribbean to do the Mod 30. So,
Okay.
but we had it almost like an iPhone back in 84 too, where you could, the one side of the phone was like a regular phone, and when you turned it over, it had a screen and a stylus that you could write on, and it would come up on your television, like you could leave notes, you know,
Oh,
for
wow.
your kids and stuff. And
Neat.
all that went on the shelf. So that's,
Yeah, hindsight.
yep.
Okay.
So then, okay, the PS2 came, you know, and they had for the 50, the 70, the 90, and I don't know what all, because I retired then in 88. Okay, I took the where they paid you to leave.
Right, when the downsizing started.
Right. The downsizing started. Well, it really started in 86, but I waited till 88 and I left. And then I was only out 10 months, and then the board, the IBM main board, was getting a lot of heat because they didn't have a laptop. And some people were coming out with laptops. So they called 7 of the original guys back and to start the laptop. So we came back, and this is what we started to work on. And I went to Lexington, Kentucky to do this. And the people who did all the hardware inside, you know, the chips and all the logic and everything, worked out in California. They worked with a private company out in California. And then, so we had Boca, California, and Lexington, Kentucky, all involved in doing this. And again, when this came out, it was voted one of the best laptops at its time.
It's heavy for a laptop.
And then everything, and then when it came time to manufacture this, we couldn't do it in Boca. So they sent it to Yamato, Japan. So then I went over to Yamato for, I think, 10 months, something like that. okay, and worked there and to get it out. But we got it out and shipped it. Everything.
And
And then Junior. Well, this was before the laptop even. When we did Junior, this was supposed to be like a set-top box, where you set this on top of your television. At that time, the TVs were really big, so you could set a box like this on top of your television. And this was really the first wireless keyboard, okay? Like you could sit on your sofa and punch the keys and play your games or whatever on your television across the room. So that was the idea for Junior. But then at that time then was the same time that the PS2 stuff and everything was going, and the IBM company decided to sell their products through IBM stores. Okay, so they kind of took the business away from Comp USA and put it in their own store. Well, these guys were salesmen who wanted to make $1 million sales. I mean, and something for $2,500, you know, they don't make nothing on, so they don't want to waste time selling this thing. So Junior, oh well, okay. First, when we worked on Junior for the announcement, okay, I was out in Los Angeles, and Don Estridge was in New York for the announcement. I was doing a demo and the announcement in Los Angeles, but don't forget there's 3 hours difference. Okay?
Right.
Now on that morning, Jane Pauley on CBS had this show, and she had 3 specialists that were going to look at the Junior, okay? And this was even before Estridge was going to make his presentation, okay?
Right.
They were just going to look at it, okay? And the one guy, he picked the board up, and of course there were all kinds of spotlights, and they're very, very bright. And you see this one thing with the QWERTY information on is glued down there, and with all the spotlights on, he couldn't see that there was nomenclature on that down there, but there's no nomenclature on the keys.
Right.
Okay. Well, he picked this up and he was looking and he didn't see anything, and he said, gee, he says, this keyboard, he says, is kind of useless. He said, not only that, he said, the keys look like chiclets. Well, the 3 guys talked chiclet, 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 chiclet for the whole half hour, okay? Well, now Don Estridge is in New York watching this thing, and I'm out in Los Angeles sleeping,
Right.
okay? Now my phone rings, and Don Estridge is on the phone, and he goes, Fred, what the hell is this with chiclet keyboard? He says, what's going on here? He says, I want nomenclature on those keys, and I want it tomorrow, he said. and he says, and if you don't get it there, look out. So I'm like, what's going on? I mean, I didn't even see the show, right?
You're half asleep,
So
right?
anyway, so when he made his presentation, he made a promise that everybody would get 2 keyboards. One with nomenclature and one without, okay? But I mean, when we did this, we had all kinds of people, expert typists, all kinds of levels of typists test this keyboard. And everybody loved it, okay? And the good thing about it, like kids, when they had the games that we were putting out, I think when we announced this, we put 2 games out. The overlays came with the games, and you could overlay it, lay it down. So now the kid didn't have to memorize that the M was the cannon and the G was the soldier, or this and that. The icons were right there, so the kid didn't have to memorize different things. So that was the whole theory behind this keyboard. I mean, this was not meant for the business person, which later on the IBM stores tried to make it a business machine. So then we had to build a second level and put a hard drive in it, and then there's many sidecars we added that make it do business stuff. Okay, so, but it never went because everything got too expensive and it got a bad rep right off the bat. So, and the IBM stores didn't make money on it, so we hardly sold any.
Okay.
So,
Now, what would you say was one of the biggest impacts that IBM had on Boca Raton, the city?
oh, I think changing the culture.
In what way?
Well, it brought a younger group of people into educated people. I mean, a younger breed, and it started changing the stores, the places, entertainment and things, and it's just the whole city got more vibrant, and I mean things started moving.
Okay. Not just a massive amount of people coming in,
Oh yeah,
but to
right.
accommodate.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, and as more people came in and that moved around more and did things more, other businesses came in. Okay, so Boca started growing. I mean, Glades Road was like a two-lane dirt road almost when I first came here. Military Trail didn't even have a red light on it. I mean, I could go from South Boca to Yamato, which I did every morning, in less than 3 minutes.
Oh wow.
So.
And I had heard that IBM was very pro-family, and so
Oh,
that
always. Yes.
that attitude spread out
Yeah.
into the community.
Right. Well, before Mr. Gershner took over at IBM was very, very pro-family. I mean, everything was built around the family. I mean, all your health care, your vacation, everything. And it was a big thing for the father, the son, and the grandson to all be IBMers, I mean, and everything. But when Mr. Gershner came and took over, everything went. I mean, respect for the individual went from #1 in IBM, which they used to put on the walls everywhere and everything, went from #1 to #10. So, that was the beginning of the end, and that's when things started. When people started getting laid off. Prior to Gershner, nobody ever got laid off. They always shifted people around, like myself or anything,
Right.
So.
What about what was Boca Raton's impact, the city's impact on IBM? Would you say?
Well, they were pretty much cooperative. They were glad to help IBM grow and everything. So it was good for both sides.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Let's see, what else? Do you well, you've talked a little bit about, present day technology that IBM had started, like the cell phone,
Yeah.
okay, the TVs. Were there any other technologies that IBM researched or developed that you can see in today's products?
Well, IBM is one of the largest patent holders in this country. Okay. I mean, every year they submit more patents than any other company. So they have worked on and developed a whole slew of things that they trade licenses with rather than do it themselves. I mean, IBM kind of today, I think they're even trying to get away from the mainframe. I mean, they'll sell the mainframes, but they don't want to build them or design them, I don't think, today. They're more into the service company theory today, under the new, female CEO. Okay, so but they're getting out of the old hardware business, and it's more service oriented.
Okay.
So
Was that a side effect or a symptom or not a symptom, a result of the downsizing, them going into more service-oriented
well,
business?
I think because I mean, and I might be prejudiced about this because I'm a hardware guy, but to me, I think when Mr. Gerstner took over, okay, since he wasn't a kind of technical man, I mean his background was in Nabisco cookies and American Express, okay, which drew him out, okay. I mean his brother was on the board and brought him in to IBM. But at that time, the focus kind of went away from the hardware. The focus became the bottom line, okay? I mean, like look at Lexington, Kentucky is where the typewriter was born. Remember the old Select Rick, you know, with the bouncing ball and everything? And I mean, God, everything. The printers, I mean, the printers, we took them out of Raleigh and gave them to Lexington when the typewriters started going bad, okay? And things like that. And the keyboards, I mean, Lexington then, when PC started designing their own keyboard, we did them in Lexington, okay, and everything. And but when the business wasn't doing good overall, Gerstner sold Lexington to Clayton Dubilier, okay, to satisfy the bottom line and get his bonus, okay. I mean, and I was in Lexington the day that was announced. That's when we were doing the laptop, and the people there were so angry. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was sad, but that was the beginning of the end, because then we started getting out of the hardware right there. Because I mean, you know, there went the printers, which are now Lexmark.
Right.
Yeah. So and everything. So.
That Lexmark's not doing so well, or HP is not doing
Well,
so well.
well, Lexmark's still making very nice printers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I own 2 of them, so I stick with my old buddies up there. I know them.
Yeah.
The same way with Lenovo laptops, okay? Same guys that worked for me, okay, and they now work for them.
Okay.
So you know, they just built a building a couple blocks down the road in Raleigh. Yeah. Yeah. See, when I left in '88, like I was out 10 months, and that's when they called back for the laptop, and that took two years about, you know, with the time over in Japan and getting the production going and everything. And then I retired again, and I was out, I think, 12 months then. And then the phone rang, and Judd McCarthy called me and asked me to come back to Boca. I know he made it look like I did something bad, so I had to come back, and I thought I was going to catch Mary Hill for something. But there was to start servers then. So then I came back to Boca. I had moved up to the Panhandle then. So I came back down here, and I stayed with my son during the week and went back to the Panhandle on the weekends, okay?
That's a long drive.
Yeah, oh, are you kidding me?
My parents lived up there.
10 and a half hours.
Yeah, my parents
Yeah, oh
just
yeah.
moved from there.
Right. Oh yeah, go across 10.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, tell me about it. And then, I found a nice road there where I could do 120 miles an hour.
We'll talk about it after the recorder as well.
But anyway, so then I was down here for 2 years doing that, okay? Then they decided, again, Mr. Gerstner shut the joint down, and he decided to move everything to Raleigh, okay? So I thought, well, that's the end of me, you know. So I was getting ready to go back home, you know, and everything, and they said, hey, Fred, would you come to Raleigh for 6 months and help us out, help us get set up and get going up there? I said, oh, 6 months, okay. I said, but you have to pay for my apartment, my furniture. Okay, no problem. I was there 5.5 years. I was in Raleigh doing that, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, so
Wow.
then in 2000, I was 72 years old. I said, that's it. I had another 6-month contract. I said, no, I'm going to play some golf.
Yeah.
So I've been playing golf since.
Is there anything else that you wanted to record for the archives about
Yeah,
your time at IBM?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about this printer stand.
Okay.
Okay, there's a little story about this printer stand. I mean, since Don Estridge isn't around anymore, I mean, I love Don like a brother. But so when it was coming time to do the announcement, he had the stage at the Waldorf Astoria booked to announce the first PC. And we had this printer from Epson, and to get the paper into the printer, we had cardboard boxes that the paper came in, sitting in back of the table, like, okay. Now, he wanted a nice open table and everything so they could see the paper coming up, you know. But then when he saw the boxes, he says, Fred, if you think I'm going on the Waldorf Astoria stage with torn boxes, he says, you're crazy. He said, now, we sent 16 sets of equipment all over the country for the announcement, right? And Don said, I want something better than those cardboard. This is only 4 days before the announcement, right? So we went into the shop, and we didn't want, first we bent a piece of aluminum, made a square thing out of it. And well, the first thing I did, I stuck 4 pencils in the 4 holes that hold the screws in here, and I set it on the table. It was kind of wobbly. And I said, there, Don. Get out of here, he said. So then we went in the shop and we did this hammered out sheet metal thing. He didn't like that either. So I said, okay. So then we went and we got a piece of plastic, and we had a little hot wire, so we milled a 90-degree thing on the 2 things there, and so we could bend it over the hot wire. And again, it was. But then he said, I went 16 of them. Well, we didn't have the equipment to do that in 2 days. So I found a guy up here in Boca that does lucite tables, like credenzas and all, and he had a nice curve to bend. I mean, and lucite was pretty thick to go down for the legs. So the table was one big piece of lucite, okay? So I called him up and I asked if he could bend some plastic for us with his machine that bends them. He said, well, bring some up and we'll try it out. So we did. We cut the pieces in the shop that night, and we took them up, and he bent it, and we had the rod, and we glued the thing on the back. It took, run it down next morning to Don. Oh, I loved it. He said, but now, he said, I got to have IBM on it. I said, what? He says, I got to have IBM on it. So then we had to find a guy to make a hot stamp. And then we stamped IBM. So we had the guy in Boca bending the 16 things, and the other guy up in Boynton Beach doing the hot stamp, and then we're running them up there the next night, get them all hot stamped, and then bring them down to the post office and ship them out. And Don had his thing on the Waldorf Astoria stage.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, these things, we paid $7.40 to build these things. And we sold them for $55. And guess what? We sold 1 million of them.
Yeah.
For something that we did in 3 nights.
Okay. So is there anything else?
I thought that was an interesting
That's a
story.
nice, yeah. No, I like that story, how
I mean,
that
when you
got
can make
developed.
$50,000 or $50 million bucks.
In 3 nights.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, just that it was the 10 best years of my life. I mean, and I unfortunately got divorced over this. My wife said I loved IBM because I worked 20 hours a day on this stuff. But that's the sad part, but the rest was still great.
But these are your babies.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and when I was separated, because I was spending, like I said, 20 hours a day, my wife kicked me out. But I met a young lady in a bar, and cute little blonde, and we went out. I mean, we were working so many hours, right? One night, one of the guys said, hey, he says, we're working too damn hard here. He said, we need to go out and have some fun. So he said, I have a card for a club. I think it was the Whale and Porpoise down in Fort Lauderdale. He said, let's go down there. They serve food, drinks, and I said, a little dancing. He says, take the night off. So we did. We all went down there. He showed his card. We went in. We had a nice dinner. We were joking around. We were drinking. And I saw a little blonde over there, and I asked her to dance. You know, we dated for 2 years. Then my wife and I got back together.
Oh.
So I dumped her. and then my wife died in 2002, and Judy's husband died. So she goes to the PC, gets on the PC and tries to find Fred Goetz, right, to see what he's doing. And the PC came up and said, oh, there's 8 Fred Goetzes. So she started calling them, and I was the 4th one that she called. Her husband died, my wife died, and we got back together the next day, and we've been together ever since, and we got married.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, so now we're married 10
So
years.
your baby helped you find your wife.
Yeah, or she, no, helped her find me.
Right.
Right, she got on the PC.
Right.
So see, it served its purpose. No, so that was great.
Okay.
That's the best story.
That is. I like that story.
Yeah.
I liked all your stories, actually, and I appreciate you taking the time to come share them with everyone.
Good.
If you don't have any other stories that you want to share, we'll
No.
conclude the interview.
No, because like I said, this has been a great time of my life, and I loved every minute of it. I'd love to do it all again.
Okay.
Right.
So then that concludes the interview.